Welcome to this webinar that is part of the INSYSTED project, a European project based on e-learning and that promote this pedagogical framework that is the object of this webinar and of the webinar that we had on the 11th of November. During the first webinar, we had the chance to understand how we have developed this pedagogical framework and how to use it in the learning. During this webinar, instead, Alessandra will provide us tips and insights in how to adopt this pedagogical framework with tools and examples. So this is the second webinar. Then we will have another webinar in January, precisely in the 18th of January. So I leave the stage to Alessandra that will host this webinar and will explain the tools and examples from the INSYSTED pedagogical framework. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alessio. It's a real pleasure to be here and to have the possibility to present the results we achieved in the frame of INSYSTED project. My name is Alessandra Tomasini, and I'm a project manager in the frame of e-learning, e-collaboration, and innovative didactics at Politecnico di Milano. The webinar of today, as Alessio said, will be devoted, at least the first part, to explore some of the activities and practical suggestions that you can find inside the instructional booklet that presents the INSYSTED pedagogical framework, and in a second phase to reflect in such active way together on points of attention that we have to take into account when implementing the INSYSTED pedagogical framework in an hybrid setting. I want to start with a very short panoramic view on the INSYSTED approach, just for whom of you was not present in the first webinar of this series. Just to say that the INSYSTED approach was really focused on is a student-centered approach that tried to valorize the integration of MOOCs, serious game, and forum-based online learning communities to foster soft skills and digital skills in students. You will, if you have already the chance to explore the instructional booklets that you can freely download from the link that Ada Giannatelli, thanks Ada, share with you in the chat. You can find a really lot of examples, practical suggestions, focus on industrial and management engineering. But we are sure that the most part of them can be easily implemented also in other settings, in other contexts. And we are really interested if you have the chance to experiment some of the activities we propose that are listed, are proposed in the booklet. If you then want to share with us your experience, how the experimentation gone, because we are really interested in collect concrete experience of how this booklet can be used. Okay, I will go through this. It's just a slide to synthesize for who didn't know really exactly what some of these three pillars are. It is a simple slide that make a definition, give a definition and strength points. That's why we choose these three elements to build the pedagogical framework in the INSYSTED project. But go directly inside the booklet. So what you can find inside of it, probably Ada Giannatelli in the last webinar already talk about the fact that is a really booklet with a lot of concrete instruction, example, case studies, proposal of activities. And there you can find, in the next few minutes, we are go more in deep on them, but generally you can find it is organized in info cards with both basic and advanced tips. So if you are more or less experienced in active learning, or more precisely in the use of the three pillars in your didactics, low-hanging fruit ideas that are tips that are relatively easy to be implemented, or for example, proposal of alternative tools to be used for conducting a specific activity, supporting research and additional resources. All these material are organized like a sort of guide for teachers or instructors who are interested in design or redesign a lesson, a module, or a whole course using such approach. And based on this, it is organized on through the big constructive alignment. So you will find really the step we propose you to follow when approaching the design of your activity. So first of all, formulate an effective intended learning outcomes, design the assessment task through which you are going to assess and verify that your student achieved the defined intended learning outcomes, and the teaching and learning activities propose them to achieve the ILO. Another element that I want to put in evidence is the use of these pyramids, the revised Bloom taxonomy, that put in order from the base to the top in increasing the degree of complexity of possible activities proposed, considering the level of knowledge that through the activities you want the students achieved. I wanted to put it in evidence because it works like a sort of fil rouge inside the booklet, because all the activities, teaching and learning activities and assessment tasks proposed are organized in this way. So you can see there is an example of assessment task presented in the booklet. You see it is organized for each level of the Bloom taxonomy. We propose one, or you will see in the teaching and learning activities, 2 activities well described that you can really take and implement in your class, and developed starting from a concrete intended learning outcomes that we collect through interviews with teacher and expert on the field of management and industrial engineering. Through them, we develop, then we propose, you see, different assessment tasks or teaching and learning activities with proposal of example, and really instruction step by step on how the activity can be organized. You see then, starting from the intended learning outcomes and the assessment task, in the booklet you will find for each of it 2 different kinds of teaching and learning activities that can be implemented in the class to achieve this specific intended learning outcome. The teaching and learning activities you see are presented also together with a sort of time schedule that help you immediately understand the kind of investment and a proposal on how to organize the different steps of the activities, in particular when they become quite complex or take a long period of time to be conducted. Apart from this example, very detailed, both for assessment tasks, then teaching and learning activities, you will find also a table with further activities and tasks proposed with remarks and rule of thumb, organized like, and this way in a table that is organized, in which the activities are grouped as well, using through the Bloom taxonomy. So you see that this pyramid, accompany you along the path inside the booklet. Other interesting elements and very useful are inspiration box. You see here, you can find always examples, or for example, forms that can be downloaded and reused. In this case, for example, is focused on rubrics. So is a part of the booklet where you can find a direct link to case study examples, how a specific activities was implemented by a teacher in a certain university, or as I said, a form of an example of rubric that you can reuse or use as inspiration, or in other part, for example, example of syllabus that can be modified and used as basis for creating yours, and so on. So you find really, I think that we think that they are very useful because we already make a selection, so you don't have to waste time exploring internet to find out what can be useful, but you have everything there. Another interesting elements are contained in the last chapter of the booklet, and there you can find a more detailed presentation with storytelling of case studies of how the three pillars was integrated, starting from concrete example of used in curricular higher education, like this. So I think it is useful also to have an idea on how the three pillars can be integrated, even if you can find them already proposed along the way. So in the example of teaching and learning activities or assessment tasks, here are really examples that have been already implemented by teachers around the world. So I finished now this introduction part where I'm just talking. So before moving to the more active part, if you have some questions or something you are interested in, we can, I can reply now and then move to the second part of my presentation. Okay, seems that's no question are there. Okay, Stefano is there. Go on, Stefano, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you for your presentation. I don't have a specific question, but because you are speaking about serious games, and we talked about business games and serious games during the previous seminar with Ada, I remember there was a question from participants regarding the master programs in math or mathematical engineering. And the specific question was, is it possible to apply a serious game, not in, let's say, the business domain, industrial domain, economic domain, which is quite easy to think about a business game or a serious game. What about specific scientific courses or scientific programs like math in the mathematical aspect? And we checked some examples. We talked to people working in the field of mathematics, and the only examples they came out with is in the area of financial mathematics. So quantitative models for the financial sector. So in this kind of setting, still we are very close to the, let's say, the economic domain, but we are speaking about financial trends of stock prices, share prices, commodity prices in the financial market. And in some games, some serious games, students might be challenged in using new algorithms and new mathematical models, and develop mathematical models to give an interpretation of financial trends and make estimates about the financial trends, and assume and make hypotheses on an optimal portfolio management strategy when you manage financial investments. So this is the examples we got from the mathematical field. I don't know whether the person asking the question is connected today, but I just give it to you as a hint, because basically you were mentioning serious games. But also in more mathematical and scientific fields, there might be examples of serious games and business games.
Thanks, Stefano. I think it's interesting. I mean, we can add any probably other reference in the booklet in the future, so we can enrich it. So as I said, now I'd like that really concretely involve you in the activity, because as I said at the beginning, one of the second objectives of today was try to reflect together about the point of attention we should have when an approach, an example of activities contained in the INSYSTED pedagogical framework that was designed in a blended learning, in a blended context, can be moved and implemented in a hybrid settings. Just when we talk about the blending setting, we operationally means that a course is designed so that some in-class time is substituted by equally meaningful online activities. So, for example, instead of explain a concept in class, I ask you to study through a MOOC, an OER, the concept, and then use the time class for discussing, for applying the knowledge, the content, study at home, and so on. When, on the other hand, we refer to hybrid learning, that's, I mean, I think that's most of you experienced in the last year when we come back from the first lockdown of during pandemic. We refer to the modalities of assessing classes. So when some students attend in the classroom and others participate at the same time remotely, for example, via web conferencing system. So what we have to take care of in such kind of situation. To reflect on this, we propose to start from one of the activities contained in the booklet. It was the game session, just to remain on theme of serious game. And you see there, we try to make it much more easier to read and to explore. In a blended learning, as I said, we can organize that before the lesson. I assign students some MOOC content to study at home. The teacher can use the lesson to answer questions about the MOOC content and launch the game challenge. So students are asked to work in group to apply, to make an exercise, so apply the knowledge supported by a serious game. They have 1 week to work in teams in the serious game and working together, collaborating, taking the right decision, and finalize a report including decision supporting data. The second lesson, so in presence, each team presents its report in 3 minutes, and the teacher dedicates time to recall and expand on theory when needed. After the lesson could be an activity where teams are asked to summarize the main results in the forum. And this is the activity that you can find now in the booklet. So starting from this activity, how we can, which strategies we can take into account to move it, to apply, to implement such activities in a hybrid setting. Ada, in the last webinar, going deep in these three guiding principles that we have to take into account when thinking to hybrid setting. So the fact that we should guarantee equity in course participation among all the different cohort of students, so the ones who take part on campus and the one who attend the lecture online. Foster student engagement and guarantee a sort of balance between synchronous and asynchronous interaction. So, having in mind these guided principles, I invite you to join me in this Miro board. I will share immediately the link with you in the chat. I don't know if some of you already, probably yes, already use Miro in your teaching practice or in other contexts. So just let me know if you see the board. Because I have two screens. Okay, thank you. So if you never use Miro, just very few words on it. It is a collaborative board, so every one of you, even if you are not logged in, can contribute, can add elements, move elements. So I just ask you just to not to change or move things in the next 2 minutes, just so I introduce the activities, but then the floor is yours. So just wait, let me say instructions. So you see that in this part, this is the activities I just explained. So I put it there so you can assess it easily to conduct the activities if you need to recall some steps of the activity. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do in the next 6, 7, 10 minutes. So first of all, I'd like you to think about your own teaching experience. And then having in mind the activity I just presented, I want that you try to reply to this question. So what would you do to ensure that the class with in-person and online students runs smoothly? You should, so you see that there are 3 rectangles, each of it refer to one of the principles. So if you want that such a class runs smoothly, so with people attending online and face-to-face, which solutions you can implement, or which things that you can do, first of all, to guarantee equity. So what can I do to facilitating students' participation independently of the modality they use to assess the class? The second element, what I have to do to smoothly manage interaction between on-campus and online students cohort. And the third element is what I have to do for making the most of the synchronous and asynchronous collaboration. This is what I ask you to do right now. So for each one of these rectangles, you should have add at least one post-it for each one of these guiding principle. For adding post-it, I saw someone already do it, but if you go on the left side of the board, you will have this menu, sticky notes, and just choose the color and double click on each rectangle and just write what you you will do. So I saw that someone already started, so it's okay. You have 7 minutes to write at least one post-it. Some are already there just to break the ice and give you an idea of the kind of detail we expect in your post-it, but you are free to write whatever you want. So please go on. And at the end, we can comment together your post-it. Great, 2 minutes left, but I saw that you wrote a lot of interesting elements. Okay, I'm trying to reorganize what you have had till now. Mm-hmm. Okay, I just moved to the last guiding principle. Thanks to Ho, because I found a lot of interesting elements you had. Okay, so 22A6. So thanks for, if you need to finish, go on. I just go back to, just to have a look on the element you wrote for under the guiding principle equity. So a lot of, I try to organize them into, just a question, who use low data tools where possible? What does you mean with low data tools? If you would like to explain also by chat. In any case, there is a part of the contribution that I listed here and refers more on the kind of tools to be used. So in order to guarantee same access to people who are in presence, who are online, and who eventually look at, watch the recording of the lecture in asynchronously, so in a second moment. So use of material and media that can be as easily accessible online and offline. The fact that instruction or tasks and everything should be shared with students orally during the lesson, but also in written form, combined feedback quizzes for online and for offline students, and so on. And it is more linked to the tools and the online environments where this material can be shared. So it is really important. There are other elements on the other part linked to more sort of organizational issues. So the fact that probably you should take into account about students that attend the class from different time zones, and the fact that it's important to create a course schedule, a weekly with weekly summary of tasks. So what should be done and what should have been done, and what student has to do in the future in a very schematic and clear way, in order that everything was clear what to have to do by this which deadline and so on. Sorry, I saw the chat.
In the meanwhile, Alessandra, I want you to advise that someone answered to your question.
Yeah.
It is Anita.
Okay, yeah, video uses more data. Yeah, absolutely. yeah, it's also an interesting issue. For example, I mean, because we experimented, you have also to take into account the fact from where students assess and attend, so assess the lessons. Because, for example, in some countries, the speed of connection is not effective for use videos, watching a lot of videos and so on, or for other kind of restriction. For example, if we think about China, and at the end, these concrete examples help to see the kind of different situation that we should try to take into account, but we know that is sometimes it's not possible to think to everything. But for sure, sorry, there's another a different comment. I think the question is, do we want to provide the same experience to those attending class and those that only see the recordings afterwards? It's a good question. I don't know if some of you would reply, maybe starting from your teaching experience. It's difficult to guarantee the same experience for sure, but I think that if you, in particular, if you organize a very complex and long activity that can be took place along the whole course, for example, a big project work or something like this, can be, I think that sometimes, probably not all the lessons, but sometimes it happens that people cannot attend all the lesson in the same way. But I think it's important that in any case, we guarantee to those people to remain in line with activities proposed. It will be not the same, but it's important that they arrive at the end and contribute in the project work. But I don't know if probably you have different vision or experience on this. Okay. Alessio said that if you want to talk and use the microphone, just raise your hands and we activate your microphone. Meanwhile, I go through in the second principle, so managing interaction between on-campus and online student cohort. Okay, so this is one of the main elements, was to guarantee that all people can listen clearly what happens. So if someone of the students in class, usually is that the problem, talk or make a is questioning or make comments and so on, remotely, people who attend remotely should listen clearly what has been said. And can be, there are a lot of solutions. Usually I saw that more people said that try to create a mixed group, so among involving people remotely and people in presence. Another suggestion can be, okay, all people even on in presence join the video conferencing in order to participate also remotely and have the possibility, if they have to speak using the microphone. The other elements was mainly was this this part, and also the fact that can I say, using during engagement, if people are interested, there are questions. Usually there is a lot of comments and participation through the chat, and so have someone who can someone different from the teacher who can monitor the chat, verify, and take history and of it. Could be an assistant, or in other case can be one or more students that change every time and did this such kind of work will be for sure help in avoid to miss something that happens, or take a sort of order and not engage, I mean, not waste, not oblige the teacher to check every moment the chat. For the last guiding element, I try to zoom them. So as I said, favoring back-channel communication via text during chat. In this case, assign to a student or a teaching assistant the role of voice of the chat. So monitor it and just share among all the class interesting questions, comments, or other requests. To organize, plan more formal Q&A session during classes. They can be complemented asynchronously, for example, in the forum, to simplify instructor workflow, create sensitive for individual reflection, and their share written reporting in between synchronous sessions. Making offline responsible for all our presentation and offline for visuals. Provide incentives to people who are studying offline class activities. Yes, here you see the fact the forum in such case can be a really precious tools because it has to keep the history and to share the summary, keep the history for all students in every moment of the course. So it's really interesting. And small group meet synchronously. Yeah, it was also there is also another. Yeah, in the activities, yes, it can be, for example, making a breakout room or live sessions, Zoom sessions, one session for each team, and keep it open for all the duration of the activities or the course. So it depends on the activity proposed. And so each team has always the same place where meets, where the teacher can enter and verify the work, reply to questions, and so on. Okay, thank you very much for your contribution. It's really interesting. Just for conclude, this is an example of coming back to your comments. As I said, when we talk about equity, we talk about a place that is accessible from everywhere, from at any time. An LMS system like the ones, for example, here from Polyme, WeBip, it's fundamental in such case because you can have can put all the materials, the lessons recordings, construct the calendar with all deadline tasks that the student are expected to complete by that date, and so on. But also, for example, this is a very nice, graphically nice use of Miro, in which a sort of weekly organization was made week by week with data, deadline, what will happen during the lessons, the day after. And so it's a thing that is always accessible, easy to modify and update. And organize all the information and all the material in order to keep everyone updated on what's happened and what is going to happen in the future. This is an example, sorry, you cannot read, but it's not that important. This is an example in reality on how Miro in this case is used for a sort of peer review. So when we talk about engagement but also synchronous and asynchronous, this is quite useful because you can use a collaborative tools. So all teams, all the students can assess to see what the other teams or the students made for that task they have to complete, comments from teachers. You can also organize, for example, to stimulate engagement, a sort of activities where, for example, if the group A explain or present their work, the other groups should make a short peer review, making a positive comment and something that should be improved in order to make them active and attentive to what is going to be presented by the colleagues, and be contributing, so be active during such kind of activities. Okay, but just to conclude, we present, remember, we start from the blended learning game session proposed, and this is so how we can manage it, implement it in a hybrid setting. This is an example, a proposal, so starting that take into consideration also in which also your comments have a result. Has been taken into account because, for example, you see before the lesson, students should use MOOC content to study at home, and then we introduce the course forum or LMS or whatever, a Miro board, if you like it, as a place where most difficult or confusing part or question can be shared before the class. So in this way, we favoring also peer learning. So maybe other colleagues can reply to your questions, but everything is available also for students who in the future, because we can in there the teacher can assess, give his reply, or someone during the lesson can summarize the replies for the teachers. And then when we talk about synchronous and balance between synchronous and asynchronous during the lesson, after reply to question, the teacher launched the game session via breakout rooms that still remain open for each team during the week of the activities. Then after the lesson, the teams play the game and prepare their report. In the next lesson, each group present the key point of its report. And for sure here we have to manage this mixed group. So based on the audio equipment, there is one person who presented. The teacher comments on each presentation, and after the lesson, the same course forum or Miro or whatever you decide, the teacher decide to use, can be enriched with a summary of what happened during the presentation lesson, and had any further theoretical elements the teacher thinks is important to share after the lesson. So this is an example that try to take into account the three guiding principles when you want to move a blended activities from the booklet in an hybrid context. this is just a synthetic slide for the summarize where you can find the INSYSTED pedagogical framework and an article that try to analyze case studies and experiences that coming from the first year of pandemic. So thanks to all for your contribution. I don't know if you have some other question, or maybe we can discuss in the second part of the webinar.
I just want to say that if you have any question, please raise your hand or write it on the chat on the Q&A. There is a Q&A where you can put questions and we will answer it. So, Stefano. Don't know if Stefano wants to tell something about what we have discussed, but okay. There is also a question from Margherita Pero that raised her hand. So if the organizer can activate her mic so that okay, here we are. Good afternoon, Margherita.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so thank you. Thank you very much for this interesting webinar. I have a question about this equity, okay? Because you choose the word equity. And I have the impression that if we want to really give the same experience to people that are only attending online asynchronously and those that are attending synchronously, we might need to use different tools. So, I mean, if I do a mirror board, if I do an interactive class, activity in class, a group in class, a group work in class, to me, it means that there is a value in that activity and in the fact that you are taking part to that activity. So if you are just watching the video afterwards, somehow we are losing a piece. So my question is, did you have a thought about that? About giving equity by, for example, providing different ways. You know? So you can, if you are completely asynchronous, you might use a completely different tool, maybe a different path, a different set of materials. I don't know if you get my point. I have some question about the word equity in this situation. To be clear, I don't think it's equal to say, okay, you are just attending asynchronously and you just watch the video. This is not equal because a part of the experience, the learning experience, you cannot do because you are not in class with me. So this is my question. I don't know if you had any thoughts about this or any comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Margherita. I think Alessandra can answer.
Start
yes.
with my, no, you are right. I mean, usually the students who attend asynchronously, in reality, when we talk about hybrid, are not the first cohort that should be considered. When we saw from literature in gray literature and so on, that when we refer to equity, it means mainly among the people who attend in person and people who attend online but synchronously. So they are with you when you are taking and offering the lesson. So in such a way, for all these two cohorts, we should guarantee equity in the sense that if I'm online, I have to understand what my colleague in present said. I have the possibility to see what the teacher do if maybe, I don't know, if you are doing something with hands in class. So for example, use the webcam to allow also people who are online to see what you are doing, for example. You are right. I mean, people who attend asynchronously should have at least the possibility to you need to know what was happened during your lesson, and for not being excluded. But it's for sure that the experience is different. I mean, could be the same if the lesson is very traditional, so you are talking on slides, and but in this case you can recover everything, listen to the recording and watching slide. But for sure, if you during the lesson you are doing something more active, a quiz or some discussion, for sure people who are not attending synchronous will lose this added value. But they have, in any case, have the possibility to understand what has happened and try to participate to the next lessons. For sure, I think that apart students who work, for example, who is they cannot really attend the class because they are working, for example, so they are in the same situation during the whole course. I think the students who find that being present during the lecture really give an added values, because for how the lesson is structured, I think that probably it will attend synchronous the lesson and not in the second moment.
If I can add something to this question from Margherita and to what Alessandra just said, I have a couple of thoughts. The first one is the difference between blended and hybrid, as Alessandra mentioned before. And I don't think we need to look for equity in, sorry, not blended and hybrid. Let me rephrase it. I'm thinking about equity in both blended and hybrid format for students that are all performing the same activities in the same way. So students that are in presence and students that are connected synchronously, we need to grant for equity. I don't think in planning and designing the course, we should take into consideration, or we should face the problem of providing equity to students that are not attending in presence, either in presence or online, the synchronous activities, but they are simply looking at the recordings afterwards. If they are looking at the recordings afterwards, is because this is their choice. So we do not have to provide equity for it, or in case of exceptional cases. So if your public transport is on strike and you cannot get the connection and you cannot attend the lecture, then as an exception, you do not attend to the class, either in presence or online, and you look at the recordings afterwards. So this is something that, in my opinion, has not to be taken into consideration by the professor in designing the class, in designing the course, okay? So the recordings are meant to be useful for people that have attended the class, either online or in presence, but they have participated into the synchronous activity. And the recording is just like a book Okay, you use the book and it's like reading your notes. During the class, you take your notes. During the class, you listen to the professor, and afterwards, you read the book, you read your notes, and you listen to the recordings. And this is very useful for students, okay? I wouldn't design a full course, an entire course, in order to provide equity to students that cannot, that decide to not access the synchronous activities. Again, it might happen for exceptions. So if a student has a specific problem and cannot attend the lecture into that day, but this is an exception, okay? This is not planned, it's an exception, then the student can access the recording, but knowing exactly that the experience is not the same. And because I'm thinking about university courses that are meant to be attended on a full-time basis by students, okay? I'm not speaking about working students. I'm not speaking about postgraduate, post-experience education. I'm speaking about our specific experience, which is university focus on students that are fully enrolled in the university, and their job, basically their activity, is participating into the program of the university. So this is the specific scope I'm referring to. In those cases, completely different setting, where I have working students that might not participate all the synchronous activities because they have meetings, they have travels, they have their own agenda, and they have troubles in coping with synchronous activities, then it's a completely different story. And I will design the class in a different way. And probably I will limit enormously the amount of synchronous activities, and I will design the course mostly on asynchronous activities, because the target is different, the audience is different, and probably also contents are different. So this is the distinction I would make. That's it. I mean, I was just thinking loud and sharing with you some thoughts triggered by Margherita's question.
Thank you, Stefano. If someone else wants to add something, just raise your hand and we'll activate your mic.
Maybe I add another comment. Having provided what I mean by equity, the next question is, how can I provide equity in the hybrid mode? Okay, here we made the distinction between blended and hybrid. In the hybrid mode, then it's a problem how to grant for equity. Hybrid, I mean, looking at the definitions provided by Alessandra, it means that at the same time, you have people in class and people online, but in a synchronous way. Now, providing equity in this case, it's far more difficult. And probably it really depends on the content you are teaching. So again, something I mentioned also 2 weeks ago in the first seminar. If you have a physical lab with physical facilities and you have to work on physical assets, you cannot provide equity. I mean, you can leverage on virtual reality, you can leverage on simulations, digital simulations online, but it's a completely different thing having students putting their hands on equipment, okay? So when you are having this kind of asset-based learning activities, I think it's almost impossible to provide equity in a hybrid mode. If you have a more theoretical class without involving physical assets, even, I mean, mathematical models, but anything you can do on a whiteboard, on a notepad or whatever, then you might strive to give the same experience to both in-class participants and online participants by having real-time interaction, multimedia communications, giving people at home to participate in the discussion, having their faces in the screen. So basically, one element of giving equity is also looking at students in their eyes. So I understand if students are understanding what I say because they are in presence, I look at their faces and I know exactly what topic, what concept is difficult to understand. I see when something is clear and I see when something is not clear and I have to repeat the concept. But I do it because I see the faces of students. If I only see in the screen names without their faces, the interaction is completely different. So it's for their own sake to ask students to switch on the camera, to have maybe in the classroom a giant screen with all the faces of students, not in the computer. I mean, the ideal setting would be in a digital class to have the physical space, have a wallpaper, a wall screen, and in the screen in the classroom, I have all the faces with the cameras on, and I see at the same time the faces of people I have in class and the faces of people I have at home remotely, and I see all of them in their eyes at the same time, and then I can really give the same experience to both of them. Because if I see strange eyes in the face of a student who is connected, and I see that in the wall, I use the same interaction I have with students in presence because I see from his or her eyes, she or he is not understanding, and I repeat the concept because I've seen that someone at home didn't catch the topic, okay? So having also this visual interaction, not with only 6 of them, 8 of them, which is what I see in the computer right now, but with all of them in the wall, and I see all of them connected, and I can see the faces, the kind of equity in terms of capability to interact with students and what they're learning might be provided.
Anita wrote in the chat that she agrees about what you are going. Okay. There are any other questions? If there aren't, I think we can also stop the webinar. Okay. I thank everyone, and I remind you that the next webinar that we will have in January, on the 18th of January, and we will talk about the serious game that was developed during this project. Stefano, would you like to close the session?
Thank you very much for coordinating the session, Alessio. Thank you, Alessandra, for your presentation and the Miro game that we had together, and thank you for your contributions. I think we had interesting insights. So hope to see you all in the seminar, putting your hands on in the business game in January.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
A good day.